407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. The desire to make the past relevant to our lives can encourage the trite and wrong-headed observation that history always repeats itself. It is also problematic, I would say, that to ask you to imagine yourself right now in the place of a Gettysburg College student in 1863, to be standing here where you would have seen thousands of corpses buried in shallow graves, overwhelmed by the smell of human death and misery, while straining to hear the words of President Lincoln. This is an exercise of pure imagination. It is an act of inquiry that gets you no closer to the historical meaning of the Gettysburg Address than if I were standing before you right now in a frock coat, wearing a stovepipe hat, and donning a fake beard. But like those men, young men, who were in the audience on November 19th, you too are at a formative and decisive moment in life, standing at the trailhead of an intellectual journey that will undoubtedly be filled with many challenges. And the words of President Lincoln can serve you as your North Star. The Gettysburg Address attests to the inescapable challenge that every educated person confronts. How do we reach across the chasm of the past and find a sense of personal direction, a sense that we are part of something greater than the self, a sense of place and a connection to other human beings? There are, of course, innumerable ways that you can connect to the past. You could sign up for one of the many ghost tours in Gettysburg, track down goblins in the town's most haunted alleys, or you might pursue a more traditional route and enroll in a history course. But history is not about feeling the past through a spiritual medium or locating the right facts from a textbook or a lecture. It is about achieving deep understanding through critical thinking. Now, while the interpretations of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address have changed over time, there is a pattern of Americans losing their critical detachment when it comes to the most acclaimed speech in United States history. And when this has occurred, we see the dangers of isolating a single historical voice when trying to make sense of the past. Now, Americans, as you well know, generally absorb the Gettysburg Address through rote memory at an early age, and they come to accept, often uncritically, the redemptive promise of Lincoln's words. That Americans did not engage in bloodlust during the Civil War. Rather, they pursued organized warfare for a higher cause, a struggle that was divinely ordained and part of the country's inevitable march toward progress and freedom. The moral clarity and high idealism of Lincoln's words were deeply felt by the president and sincerely believed by most Northerners. But the certitude that infuses the Gettysburg Address must not obscure the many ways that people made meaning of the battle, ways that were not always in line with Lincoln's thinking. For the soldiers who survived Gettysburg, they were not so confident about the direction of history or their ability to read the future. Seeing humans slaughter each other with impunity crippled them with doubt and threw them into the pit of despair. Many of these men, Union and Confederate, wondered if the Civil War was becoming a frenzy of killing with no purpose, no end in sight. "I have seen so many wounded and dead," wrote a semi-literate soldier after the battle. "I don't want nothing to eat, hardly, for I am sick all the time and half crazy. I never wanted to come home so bad in my life." The words of this one soldier should remind us that Lincoln's Gettysburg Address did not speak for all people, and that our desire to find in the address a universal meaning can encourage us to hear a single voice of the past. Unfortunately, the voice we often hear is the one that's most comforting and reassuring to our ears, and we lose as a result how the historical process is driven by a mighty collision of people that left historical actors feeling lost and overwhelmed. That is the great lesson of history that is imparted to us today. One that should help us appreciate and embrace that the intellectual journey that you're about to embark upon is something that is utterly chaotic, confusing, and mystifying. Now, there will be moments of clarity during your academic careers, to be sure. Times that you discover something truly redemptive about the world and your place in it. An experience no different than what Abraham Lincoln felt right here on November 19th, 1863. But you should savor those moments because they are fleeting. You are better positioned than most of your peers to realize this hard truth, because as students of Gettysburg College, you live and study on a great battlefield of the Civil War, a historical landscape that forever tells us that no person can escape the maelstrom of the past, that there is not one dominant voice from history that can lead us toward the future, and that the search for the Holy Grail of truth is an enlightening but elusive quest. So, it is my hope that during the next 4 years, you will be consumed by constant intellectual turmoil and confusion, punctuated from time to time by moments of great inspiration and intellectual clarity. And when you stand before Penn Hall in 2015 to receive your diploma from President Riggs, I hope that you will remember Lincoln's words from the Gettysburg Address, that there are great tasks remaining before us. Words that should guide and inspire you as you make your way from Gettysburg College into this baffling but grand and beautiful world. Thank you.